time no see, shall ya?
Bright Memory is the best unfinished game you'll ever play. Developed by FYQD Studio, I first heard about this thing I think back in 2019 when it was first in early access and everyone was raving about it. Telling me to check it out because it was like Devil May Cry in first person mode where you play it as a Chinese waifu named Sheila. And yes, I know it's Sheila, but look, Sheila's funnier. Well, they weren't lying. I mean, Bright Memory does feel like Devil May Cry, somewhat in a first person perspective. And you do indeed play as a Chinese waifu. A waifu you can even dress up in an unlockable schoolgirl outfit complete with skirt physics and panties. Classic. It also feels like an unfinished game, but one that is just so close to being awesome, so close that it hurts my asshole. First time I played this thing, I didn't like it to the point that I even left a salty review on Steam about it, voicing my disapproval. After the salt had subsided, I deleted that review and I gave it another go. The second time I played it, I still didn't like it, but I could see the potential it had. But by the third time, it all started to click and I could appreciate what it was trying to do, and every time after that, well, let's just say that it's definitely my cup of tea. I'll start by saying that I have no idea what's going on in this game, and it sure doesn't really ease you into things either. You start the game going on Motoko Kusanagi using stealth camouflage to sneak into this laboratory, where you ambush and kill all of these guards. There's no tutorial or nothing, you just murder the piss out of a bunch of guys and then you get a move on. After that, another bunch of guards turn up and you finish those guys off before the closest thing we get to an antagonist appears and you're both sucked into this portal. And sent off to a magical land where plot devices become even more ambiguous, along with some odd video game references. This whole opening feels like some kind of Unreal Engine tech demo more than an actual game because it just packs in about a bazillion different visual effects, including Sheila's parachuting skirt. Now, I don't mean this in a bad way, this is a surprisingly good looking game. It runs on the Unreal 4 engine and honestly could pass itself off as a AAA game sometimes because of just how stunning some of the environments look. There's some incredible texture work, just really high-res stuff combined with these highly detailed environments, down to being able to see individual bricks jutting out of the walls. There's great other incidental effects too, like reflections in puddles of water you'll see, rain and leaves being blown around in the wind, and a lot of the particle effects for Sheila's weapons and abilities during combat, like it genuinely looks great. The demo's even got RTX support, making it look even better for the 12 or so people who have RTX cards. More surprising though is how this game is supposedly developed pretty much by just one guy. The fact that one person has been able to pull this off in an engine that often ends up looking like complete shit in the hands of other developers is definitely a notch on this guy's belt. Anyway, to get back to my original point, the story goes that you've teleported yourself to some kind of magical island near the North Pole where creatures out of Chinese mythology are running wild. Pandemonium ensues as man and monster do battle. And Sheila, I guess, has to stop it, or else the world ends, or something along those lines. 40 years of darkness, earthquakes, volcanoes, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
Enough, I get the point!
Luckily, she's got the tools to get the job done, and I'm not talking about her uncomfortably sized chest. I don't really know what to compare the controls in this game to. My initial thoughts was that it reminded me of Crysis, with Sheila having all of these combat suit abilities on constant cooldown, but there's not really anything like this in any of the Crysis games, so it's kind of hard to find comparison. I guess you could kind of compare it to Overwatch, how you've got these abilities bound to keys like Q, E and F on the keyboard, which are easy to activate in a pinch. Visually, it looks like a combination of the Crysis games and Syndicate with all of the bloom and the futuristic tech stuff. But then all of the magic and supernatural stuff is just completely out of left field. Now, the main core of the combat is this combo system which ties into air juggling enemies, which is where you see the Devil May Cry influence. You're either fighting these futuristic looking soldier dudes who just use hit scanning weapons and more often than not just stand in one place and shoot, occasionally showing some ability by zipping around, but mostly they're pretty sediment. This side of the combat is pretty stock standard but can be more or less fun depending on how you use your abilities. The other enemies are the various kinds of mythological creatures and the monsters you come up against. You've got zombies with swords and shields. There's large bats and lion turtles. Lion turtles, yeah, a creature with the head of a lion and the shell of a turtle. along with a couple of boss fights, one against the Lord of the Forest, who looks like something out of Dark Souls, and another one against the goddamn God of War. No, not that one, this one's called Xing Chan. Is that how you pronounce that? Check out some of the artwork for this guy I found on Google Images too. I mean, it's badass. Well, most of it is anyway. Initially, you're pretty limited in what you can do, but as you kill enemies and collect XP, you can then unlock all of this stuff to play around with. For starters, you can unlock things like faster movement speed and more resistance to damage, but also the ability to hover in the air when attacking, which gives you a bit of a respite from enemies on the ground, but also the chance to extend out combos longer. Sheila can hold down jump for an extended boost, almost akin to a double jump mechanic, and pressing shift in any direction on the keyboard is going to cause you to dodge quickly, because you can't have an FPS game these days without some kind of dodge or dash mechanic. Your main combat abilities though, and the ones that get the most mileage, are the EMP, the light blade, and the grapple. The EMP sets off a blast that launches enemies in the air, then you're going to want to use something like the light blade with its 3 different attack patterns to attack those enemies still hovering. One attack is just a basic slash, which sends out a projectile. The other is a more concentrated slash, which sends out a more powerful projectile that staggers enemies. And then the third one, Sheila slams her sword into the ground, launching enemies into the air, along with my dick. You can also sort of activate a rage mode, which, again, you guessed it, launches nearby enemies into the air. And probably the most OP ability in the game is this kind of force field, which damages enemies in its vicinity with AoE damage. Pretty awesome. Then you've also got alternate modes for the EMP. Bound to F on the keyboard, if you press F twice instead of just once, you can instead shoot out this little bubble that stops time for those enemies caught up in it, making them easy targets. Mash it 3 times and you can shoot out a goddamn lightning bolt. I mean, look, I do like me some lightning bolt attacks. They're second fiddle only to the fire and the ice attack. If it sounds like a fair bit to deal with, well, I mean, it kind of is, and it's a little bit overwhelming at first. But after a while it becomes second nature and you get used to the cooldowns and the controls as the muscle memory starts to set in. I don't know if I'd say that Bright Memory is a hard game, but it is definitely challenging at first, like trying to catch an oiled up baseball with an oven mitt. But the more you get used to it, the easier it becomes, and like a lot of skill-based games, the combat adapts to your own playstyle. If you play well, the game seems to be easier, whereas if you struggle, it appears a lot harder. Now look, I know that can be said for like every game ever made, but Bright Memory's got the kind of combat system that gives you more than enough tools to deal with what's being thrown at you. But on the other hand, it's going to punish you if you don't use these as much as possible. I have to say that overall it's really fun, it's just mostly let down by the weapons, or the lack thereof. If you haven't noticed by now, there's not really all that much variety when it comes to the guns. There's only 3 weapons in the entire demo. Yeah, 3, just like the amount of balls I have. You've got an assault rifle, an automatic shotgun, and a pistol. I mostly just use the assault rifle, swapping to the shotgun out of boredom, and I only used the pistol during the prologue section when I had to use it. After that, I honestly forgot it was there, like that hooker that I keep locked in my garage. Wait, did I say that out loud? I think the whole reloading mechanic kinda takes a bit away from the juggling aspect of the combat. I mean, there's nothing more annoying than launching an enemy into the air, then swapping to a weapon and finding you first have to reload it, wasting the whole point of that air launch in the first place. Some of the enemies in the boss fights feel super spongy too. Now look, I know that's the point of a boss fight, that it takes a lot of hits, but by the end of it, your fingers are going to be bruised from mashing the keyboard so much. Being early access and little more than a teaser though, there ain't all that much to see with this thing. I mean, you can probably finish it in about 30 minutes or so. There's a New Game Plus mode though, and if you finish it 3 times in New Game Plus mode, you even get an achievement for it, but it's still super light on content. And look, finishing it 3 times won't make your parents love you. But I feel like a lot of the complaints I have of this thing are just kinda mute, if only because the developer isn't even working on this thing anymore, and has started from scratch apparently for the final game, simply called Bright Memory Infinite. Now there's 2 trailers out for this thing at the moment. There's a so-called reveal trailer and then a gameplay trailer. The reveal trailer is more of a teaser and it just shows this series of random scenes intertwined with a backing track that just reveals absolutely bugger all. Does it look interesting? Sure. Is it informative? Not in the slightest. The gameplay trailer at least shows off a bit more of what we can expect to see in the full version, but this is like the Killzone 2 of gameplay trailers. That is to say, we're not really being shown actual gameplay content. If this is what they're aiming for, though, it at least does look like they've really developed the gameplay a whole lot more. It looks like there's some kind of cloaking mechanic similar to the Crysis games, and the grappling hook appears to be able to be used for movement as well as combat, so that's pretty cool. At one point, Sheila is knocked off a cliff and happens to land on the wing of a passing plane where a dude with a gun is somehow already waiting. It's not only jumping the shark at this point, it's backflipping over the shark naked with machine guns in both hands. Grappling across a rain-soaked rooftop and engaging in a sword and gunfight with a dude decked out in samurai armor though is absolutely awesome. And this is the kind of aesthetic I can totally get behind. Outside of this brief gameplay trailer, most of which I assume is just pre-rendered and totally scripted, not all that much info has been given out on what the hell they're going to be doing next. So to sum the whole thing up, we still don't know jack shit. The good news is that if you've bought this early access version, you're also going to get the full version for free when it's finally finished. I just really hope they keep the schoolgirl outfit. Bright Memory is one of those rare times when you play something in such an early stage you can still see the potential it has. It's not a throwback to Doom or Quake like the other shooters we've been inundated with recently. It seems like it's mostly just trying to do its own thing. The setting is unique, it has a cool visual style and chaotic combat. And if they can improve upon this formula for the final game whenever it comes out, well, the future is very bright indeed. See what I did there?